Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Andrew, and we're here yet again for another installment of my Star Wars show. And today we are undertaking the humongous task of coming up with the BLB Star Wars Visions aggregate as we figure out what our official ranking is. And now the way this is going to work will be explained after the plugs, because before we even get there, Andrew, I'm going to tell the audience to do a couple things to talk to us about Star Wars in our Discord. The link to that is at the top of the description. Oh, and while you're down there, do a couple other things for me here. I'll use a little mind trick on you to make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, like the video. I think that's everything. But before Andrew and I dive into this, going episode by episode to share our thoughts, we got to set the stage here, right? Because the goal is to have the BLB server ranking of Star Wars Visions. So both Andrew and I have lists, ranked lists of the episodes, as well as a number of our community members who submitted their lists on Discord. After we go through and talk about each episode, we're going to be making the aggregate ranking based on the individual scores we all give. So, for instance, let's say we all put the duel, the best episode of Star Wars Visions, at number 1. That would have a total score of 9 points. And so well, wait, no, that's not true. Hold on.
Oh, like what?
We have 2 of our lists, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 other lists. So there's gonna be 6 lists. So that will have 6 points. If everybody puts it at number 1, it has 6 points. And the less number of points you have, the higher up the list you go. So if I put Tatooine Rhapsody at number 8, as I did, and let's say Andrew has it at number 2, that's 10 points right there. And it's going to keep getting more points, the more points you have.
Abram, don't do it.
The lower down the list you go. But those are the ground rules. It'll become explicitly clear when we get to that point of the video. But before we do, we're going to go episode by episode. And Andrew, as usual, the notes master himself, is going to take us there with a little bit of a plot synopsis of the duel before we jump into our thoughts.
Right. So everyone and I don't want to waste too much time. So we're just going to go with the Wikipedia provided summary, which should be, if it's good enough for Wikipedia, it's good enough for us. It says the duel, set in an alternate history 20 years after a war between the feudal Jedi Empire and a renegade Jedi sect called the Sith, a lone wanderer known only as the Ronin witnesses a legion of former stormtroopers attempt to besiege a small village. The Ronin fights the leader of the bandits, a self-declared Dark Lord of the Sith armed with a heavily modified lightsaber, a really cool one actually, while his droids save the villagers. The Ronin, a former actual Sith, lures the bandit leader into a trap and kills her. The Ronin, shown to be collecting red kyber crystals from each Sith he has killed, decides to give the leader's crystal to the villagers, citing that it can ward off evil. And that's it right there.
These are perfect synopses. That's exactly what we needed on this episode. So, Andrew, what do you think about the duel?
I love the duel.
Yes.
It's gotten a lot of glowing praise from the rest of the Discord community, from our group, because I think the duel is essentially what Visions should be, in just succinct, compact delivery. Is exactly what it should be. As I mentioned before, I think we started recording. I don't remember when you started recording exactly, but I did watch a little behind the scenes stuff from each of the episodes of Visions. Has like a behind the scenes extra tab kind of stuff. And the director for this mentioned how because of the obvious influence of Star Wars in Japan, Star Wars is known obviously to be heavily influenced by Kurosawa and his work with like Yojimbo and Fortress and Seven Samurai. And so they went back to that influence to just kind of do kind of like a circular thing. It comes all full circle. And they went with the black and white chromatic style, right, of Kurosawa films. And I like the hand drawn look. It has like a very carbon papery kind of cross hatch style. Like even when we see the Sith Lord, the woman, when she's like holding one of the villagers like still, and like you can see like even the details on like everything's like very like it fluctuates back and forth. So it has like this kind of like flapping, but almost like cross hash carbon scoring kind of look to it. It's very simple, doesn't overcomplicate things, but it still does a thing that where it kind of usurps, or it does our expectations, kind of throws us for a loop when we find out that we just assume that the Ronin is could be a Jedi, right? And then like we have that thing about how color works, because even though it's black and white, we do get color. When there's like a blaster or a laser, it's blue, green, whatever, right? Red. And we see him like draw from scabbard, which dope idea, having a lightsaber like in a scabbard.
Yes.
And it comes out red. And even the villagers And even like the Sith lady, she's like, what, like red, like what, like, because you assume it's gonna be blue and green, and it's not, and it's like, oh shoot, like, okay, wait, is he a Sith? Is he like a dark Jedi? Like, what's going on here? And then it kind of plays perfectly into the idea of like what a Ronin is, where it's a Ronin's not necessarily a good guy or a bad guy, but just somebody who is wandering around, a masterless swordsman who has his own agenda. So, um, did you have any other? Also, how the astromech droid with the little straw hat is so
He's
cool. I
awesome.
love that. And then when he comes out with the little like Chinese style, like little missiles, like little fireworks, so dope, so dope.
The duel is one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars content, period. I think the duel is awesome for
Absolutely.
a lot of the reasons you said, but I think for some others also because it feels very mysterious. I think
Mhm.
part of Star Wars is fun is its mystique. And this episode is all about that mystique. Now, of course, it's been expanded upon because I believe there's a book specifically about the Ronin, which I haven't read. But it's a very classical setup. The force wielder enters a village. The village needs protection, but the story is all about the mystery of who is the Ronin, and we never learn, and that's really cool to me. I love these little subtle moments of like he opens up the fold in his clothing, and there's like 6 or 7 Sith kyber crystals in there. So he's just like
Like,
going
where did they
around.
come from?
Yeah,
Right?
he's
Like,
like maybe he's harvesting them, maybe he's just going around killing Sith with his astromech droid. That's also good, but then there's the other dimension of just the mystique of weird Star Wars aliens. There are this group of guards in the town, and they are all so interesting. There's more traditional stuff, like there's a Trandoshan who's fighting with melee weapons.
mm-hmm.
But my favorite is what race of creature is Sebulba? Do you know off the top of your head?
Doug, I think Doug. It's
Yeah, yeah.
DUGG.
There's one of those guys who's in this like recommissioned recon imperial recon
The
droid,
probe droid thing.
probe
Yeah,
droid,
yeah, yeah. You're right.
and he like flies around in this thing, and it's using samurai swords. Like it's so creative. It uses all of these different Star Wars characters in brand new ways. It repurposes them and really clever things that we've never seen before to the saga, really, all in the context of this little ramshackle village.
And
And
then
it like the little things like, ooh, the chief of the village, he's still around. He didn't run away leaving his little child in charge.
he's just sick
he's
or something.
he's sick, and this kid is
Mhm.
stepping up. Like we learn so much with so little, and I think that's really good storytelling.
I love the how the bandits kind of have like repurposed stormtrooper slash clone trooper slash like new
Yeah,
order. Like all the armor is just like a mismatch of just like this is like what we have lying around. This is what we cobbled together to kind of make this very like loose band of just like bandits. And then I was so in the extra stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, the director mentioned how they came up with the idea of how the bandits are like very much styled after the bandits you see like in those old Kurosawa films, where like they don't really have shoes, they're not exactly an equipped professional army. It's just like
yeah.
whatever they have lying around to put together. And like when they submitted those ideas to Lucasfilm's like, yes, like run with this looks really good. And he said like that was like his favorite design that he submitted, like not the Ronin, not the Sith, not even else. It was the bandits, the designs they had. So I agree, that looks really dope. And then they talked a little bit about how the little teapot, right? He says a teapot, when the teapot goes off, like that's
Yeah.
that's a cue. Like the director mentioned how he wanted to add like a time limit as also as like a sense of mystery, but also because he doesn't want to do like a traditional like countdown, like where you could see the numbers like a clock or something. So like he's like I wanted to create tension so that when that T goes off, like something's gonna happen. And I thought he does it really well. And then there was also two references to the films, Abra. I want to see if you can recognize there was two references during their battle between the Ronin and the Sith woman. I'll
Hmm.
give you one. The
Yeah.
obvious one is when they're on the log in the river. It's supposed to it's a direct reference to Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin and Obi are
Sure.
on the lava stream. Like the director mentions, he loved that. He wanted to put that in because he loves that particular part of the film. But also when they go over the waterfall and she does a thing where she kind of peeks behind the waterfall. What do you think that's a reference to?
I don't know.
Phantom Menace, the barriers, the door, the
Oh,
shield
sure.
barriers.
Okay.
You know how
I
Darth
can
Maul's
see
like
that.
pacing
Yeah.
back and forth and he like taps it? She does the
I can
same
see
thing where she
that.
kind of pokes it with her lightsaber to kind of see through. And so when she brings the log down to kind of create like that opening, that was like another thing that the director referenced to with Phantom Menace. So I thought that was really cool. Things I wouldn't have normally realized
Yeah.
until like somebody pointed out to me. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
So that was clever.
I wouldn't have even thought of that, frankly, because so when Visions came out, I watched the first three episodes, and then life got in the way, and I never actually went back to the show. And so when I rewatched it, well, when I finished it, I also rewatched those first three episodes just because Visions came out like last October or something, so I want to be fresh on
Yeah,
them.
September. Yeah.
And there's a lot of details like that I guess I missed, but I think that's what's so good about this episode is it's so rich with everything, but it's also so minimal. That their lightsaber battle is really intense in its animation, but I love how it ends with just a simple trick behind the water, fake out, use the hubris of the Sith against them, and just stab them in the back. It's all so beautifully executed, I think.
That's what the
And
direct. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and that extends, in my opinion, to the aesthetic, which the other thing about this show is I'm not an anime guy. I'm not anti-anime, but anime is just like, I'm a ship in the night with anime. I love Akira. I really like Death Note. There's certain touchstones I have, but
Oh,
for the
you like
most
Death
part,
Note, Abram? I didn't know
yeah.
that. That's cool.
I've read the manga. I haven't seen the anime, but I've read the manga all the way through.
Mhm.
But there's when I think of how anime looks, it looks a particular way in my head, and I think a lot of this show
Like
is in
big
that.
eyes and
It's a lot of that more traditional anime aesthetic, which I think the show is beautiful throughout, but this is especially beautiful. As you were describing earlier, the ways that like it's realistic, but there's this is artistic intent to where shadows move on the face, even when the face doesn't move. Like it's so masterfully done from every facet, from that choreography of the fight to the aesthetic. I just think this episode is basically perfect.
yeah. Just my last bit, and then we can move on. Is we kind of do see a little bit of like the Sith side in the Ronin at the way he fights. He doesn't fight clean by any means. If you notice,
No,
like as soon as he introduces himself, he does a force trick thing where he lifts the body behind her and she gets distracted. And then he tries to go in for a cheap shot and she like catches him in time. And then also like the fake out with the waterfall where he puts a lightsaber on the statue. Like this guy is not above, fighting a little dirty, a little kind of sneaky, right?
yeah,
He's very much kind of whatever it takes to win. So it was just one of those things that comes through and they're like, oh yeah, like that's how a Sith Ronin or an ex Sith Ronin would fight. Not very honorable, just kind of by any means necessary. So
yeah,
any last thoughts or
it's good.
all right, cool. Next one. The second one, which I know Abram's not a huge fan of, but oh well.
I'm excited to talk
Tatooine
about this.
Rhapsody. During the Clone Wars, a Jedi Padawan named Jay attempts to escape from the war only to stumble upon a Hutt named Gee. Gee offers to take Jay in if he becomes the lead singer of Gee's rock band, Star Waver. Such a cool name, actually. And Jay accepts. Years later, during the reign of the Galactic Empire, the members of Star Waver are hunted by the bounty hunter Boba Fett. Fett eventually captures Gee and reveals that Gee's relative, Jabba the Hutt, wishes to execute him due to Gee not wanting to be a part of his family's crime syndicate. Jay inspires the other members of Star Waver to go to Tatooine and attempt to save Gee. They manage to convince Jabba to let them play one more song together before his execution. The song is loved by the execution's audience, and Jabba ultimately spares Gee and becomes the band's first sponsor. There you have it. Abram, go ahead and break my heart. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. When I watched this episode initially, I really didn't like it at all. Rewatching it, I liked it more, actually. I was basically dead set on this being my least favorite, but upon a little bit more consideration, it's not. I have it as my number 8. I still don't like it that much, but it's for a particular subjective reason, because I think actually the show is quite whimsical. I like the idea. First off, I like the idea that this is not Jedi and Sith fighting, because
Yep.
while I like Visions a lot on the whole, it ends up ending up in this sort of plot archetype of mysterious Jedi or mysterious Sith come and do battle, and then the episode ends.
Mhm.
And this isn't that at all. It's this fun, like a rock band adventure, and that's clever, and I think it's well animated. But for me personally, I have never been a fan of, with I think with the exception maybe of Lego Star Wars, when media doesn't take characters seriously. And for me, things like Boba Fett tapping his foot along to the music, or Jabba like putting on this huge rock band instead of doing the execution, like to me, it just doesn't ring true to how I understand these characters. And so it ends up, while I get the charm, I get the spirit of it. For me personally, that's just, it's not my vibe. It's the same reason I don't like Lego Batman, for instance. I think Lego Batman's an excellently made movie, but for me personally, that sort of joke, that wit isn't my type of joke or wit. So that's kind of where I come
Okay,
down in
kind of.
Tatooine Rhapsody, where I really like the concept. I think it's really well executed, but for somebody else.
So you feel like it kind of undermines the legacy or the history of these characters, we're saying.
Yeah, I think so. For me personally, I don't leave Tatooine Rhapsody shaking my fist, going, "Oh, I can't believe they made Boba Fett do a little joke, a little physical comedy gag." But just for the way I enjoy my Star Wars,
Right.
it goes down lower in my list.
I see. I can understand it. When I was watching the behind the scenes stuff, like the studio at I forgot what studio this was,
Yeah,
but they asked they wanted to use Boba and Jabba, and like Lucasfilm was like very hesitant. They're like, oh, like what do you want to do with them exactly? And they're like, oh, well, Boba's only going to come in to do this, and like, is he doing Boba things? Like, yeah, he's doing Boba things, and they launched like, okay, only because it's not a huge part of the story because
yeah,
they're like very hesitant with like don't misuse our characters or like change the nature of our characters and stuff. So that's why I think the rest of the series you don't really see any other legacy characters. This is the only episode that actually has established Star Wars characters. So I thought that was kind of a good use of that. I think you mentioned that too before. I wonder because I forgot to read it for the duels. I want to read it now. Some of the for Tattooing Rhapsody, some of the comments we have from our friends in the
sure, yeah,
Discord server. Young Samuel says, Tatooine Rhapsody is almost exactly what I think Visions should be about: a cute and genuinely sweet story that wouldn't fit in live action, but works great in the style. But with Fett tapping his foot and Jabba tapping his tail to the music is a kind of thing I absolutely love. Sarah says Tatooine Rhapsody is totally fine. Not much stuck with me, as it felt predictable, but at least it was cute. And then one Tanner Dykstra says it breaks away from the Sith versus Jedi and just tells a cute little story about cute little characters. If you dislike it, you have a cold lump of coal where your heart should be. And I remember the music being pretty good too. So Abram, sorry about your heart
yeah.
condition.
I'm better get that checked out, I suppose. But no, I think they're right. It is very cute and it's whimsical. I just, for me, it ends up feeling a bit toothless. I think also because this is the animation style. I think it's nice, but like those, like that sweeping shot through 3D animated Tatooine doesn't really work for me. I think that it's less striking and it's just not a tone that I personally gravitate towards. Again, to bring up Batman, there's a reason why the Batman is my favorite Batman movie, and I don't care at all about Batman 66, for instance. My dislike of this is very subjective because I think that on the show, with rare exception, is really, really well made.
Yeah. The characters really didn't do much for me. I know like they were
Yeah.
saying how they're cute little characters or they were interesting characters. I just thought they were kind of just whatever. I like the design of the 3-in-1
Oh yeah,
alien.
he's fun.
That's really cool. It's like three different personalities put together in one. I thought that was cool. And the only thing that I really like, what I really liked about it was how the for me, I was when I first saw it, I expected like Jay was gonna go in, they were gonna go rescue the hut, and they were gonna play a performance to distract Jabba
Yeah.
or do some kind of thing where they were gonna sneak him out and then just like flee. But like when he comes in with the lightsaber, and and I was like thinking, oh, like they're gonna fight their way out, but the lightsaber is a microphone, Abram. It's a microphone. And I think that's so cool to take something that's generally considered to be a tool of destruction and repurpose it into what's essentially a tool of creation, into a
Yeah.
microphone. I think that's really powerful stuff. How, because like even the Gamorrean guards are like, what? And like, oh no, like it's my mic. Like it's not like what you think. Like this is him shedding his like he's finally let go the Jedi past,
Yeah.
and like I'm going full musician performer. Like I'm not like I've shed away, because I was thinking like, oh, we're gonna have like a rescue mission, and really he does a smart thing of appeal to Jabba's greed. Like, hey, like you could kill us or you could kill our friend here, but like you probably you profit more if you like sponsor us. Like we got an encore going on, like he's appealing to a sense of greed and self-interest, and I think that's way more of a clever ending than like rescuing him. So
Yeah, I thought it might be kind of sail bargey when I watched it the first time. Where there's this big elaborate ruse happening. And that's not what ends up happening. We end up just singing a song about like being yourself, which I think is the other part that's like, I don't know if Jabba's really gonna be jamming out to a song about like self-empowerment from these like random kids, but
it,
it's a nice, I think, point of contrast from the rest of Visions, even if I don't really connect with it myself.
it's like pumped up kicks, Abram. Like as long as you don't think of the lyrics, it's very enjoyable and peaceful, and like it's a song about good times until you listen. So
Yes.
all right. In that case, let's move on to our third one. We have the twins. Yeah, take a deep breath, Abram. Take a deep breath. In the aftermath of the Battle of Exegol, so this is way after like the First Order and stuff. The remnants of the
Yeah.
First Order and Sith Eternal begin the construction of two conjoined star destroyers. Really cool design, I think. They house a large super laser capable of destroying planets. Using Sith alchemy, they are also able to create two force-sensitive biological twins named Kare and who they train in the dark side of the Force. The twins eventually become the leaders of the Remnant and plan to use their super weapon to destroy the New Republic. However, Kare goes rogue on the day the weapon is supposed to be fired due to him having a vision of the future involving his sister's death. He also steals the large kyber crystal that powers the super weapon. Confronts Alkare outside of the Star Destroyer in outer space, and they duel. During the battle, the crystal is split in half, and uses a piece to power a metal exoskeleton. Using his X-Wing and the power of hyperspace, Kara is able to destroy Am's sliver of the crystal and the super laser. He crash lands on Tatooine and vows to rescue his sister from the dark side. So that was a shorter summary than I actually expected, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Um, so this studio is probably one of the more better known ones of like the whole anthology. Studio Trigger. They've done a couple of. They've done. I don't know if you've heard of Kill la Kill. There's like a game based on that, and they also did Promare, which is like a big anime movie. If you look at Promare and the characters, they look almost exactly like the ones from the twins, actually, which is interesting. I know you're not in. Well, let me just read what some of our friends here said.
Sure.
Tanner says, saw a lot of people not liking this one. The Twins rocks because it uses super gonzo visuals and nonsense physics to create a very visually pleasing and incredibly animated episode. On top of it being super badass and fantastically animated and acted. Young Samuel says, The Twins has a lot of ridiculous and, in my opinion, stupid concepts in it, but it has such an excessively crazy visual style and sense of motion that balances it out and makes it work. Sarah says The Twins was easily the best of the bunch. Studio Trigger's gonzo style, there's that word again, dialed everything I love about Star Wars to an 11, and man, does it rock. So, like, one of the things that's very characteristic about the studio is if you notice a lot of the character, like, usually characters have black outlines in most animation, but like here they use a lot of like pinks and soft like pastels, like light baby blue, a lot of pink, a lot of red, and their outlines are usually one of those colors. It's not like black. It's a very distinctive kind of hyper stylized style, and I think I agree with Tanner. Like that's why I absolutely love it. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely up there. But Abram, give us your opposing take on this.
Yeah, so this is another one I rewatched that I really wasn't crazy about the first time around because I watched it the first time and I was like, this is just horse shit. Like what like
I'm sorry.
I was like, what is happening? It I
Welcome to anime, Abram. Welcome to anime.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I'm like, this goes like there is no sense of place, there is no sense of physics, there is no sense of anything really. It's just like only style. And I think upon rewatching that, I agree with all that, but I appreciated it a little bit more. I think the twins, I have it right basically in the middle of my list. Because as far as the like this is just again the Jedi, this is just the two lightsaber force users fighting basically for 20 minutes. So I don't think it's as rich as some of the other stories that fit that archetype, but
Right.
I appreciated the style more because what's really interesting about this one is that it uses more like Star Wars sort of signifiers than we see in other episodes. So like there's a lot of you got your X-wings, you're on the Star Destroyers, you've got that Star Wars music in the background.
ATSTs.
Yeah, it feels really in universe for as outrageous as it is. And so I think that's an interesting balance. I find myself maybe wanting more out of the actual plot. But visually on the second watch, like this is actually quite engaging the way it moves, the sort of feel here. Because I really like the idea of the genetically engineered Sith. Of course, we get a little bit of genetic engineering with everybody's favorite Snoke plot twist or whatever, but I like the concept. I just wish that there had been a little bit more than here's a planet killer. I'm gonna
Right.
stop the planet killer. They're gonna have a lightsaber battle, and then my droid, who's not named R2D2, is gonna come and rescue me. So I
Our
think I think it's
our duo,
fun.
right? Our duo, I
Yeah,
think.
our duo. I think
Yeah.
it's fun. I think it's visually stimulating, but I think it's the story is something to be desired.
More flash than substance, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
I agree. I agree. I think you're right, but also I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm willing to kind of just look over it for that reason. So interesting enough, Studio Trigger. There's 7 studios and 9 episodes. So 2 studios actually did more than one episode. Studio Trigger
Yeah.
is one of them. They did this one, and they did another one. I don't know if you would. Do you know what the other one is yet, or no?
I honestly I was not familiar with enough of these peoples that like it kind
Okay.
of didn't mean
It's
anything.
so different. I'm curious to see if you'll be able to figure out what it is, because the other one is not like this, and they
Yeah.
did that on purpose for a reason. But we'll get to it when we get to it. So, funny enough, out in the extra stuff, it mentions how liaison, I think that's the right word, between Lucasfilm and Studio Trigger. He works at Lucasfilm now, but he did his internship with Studio Trigger before, so I think that's how they were
Oh,
able to kind of, because of him, they were able to even begin this anthology project to get the other studios mixed in and
that's
stuff.
cool.
So interesting stuff there. Um, yeah, it's a little over the top, especially I think once the General Grievous arms came out of I was kind of just like, oh boy, okay, like it was cool enough when it was just 2
Yeah.
lightsabers, but then we have the extra ones. Then we have the lightsaber boot. I don't know if you remember that, where she like sticks out her boot and another one comes out.
Yeah.
And then I think one of my favorite shots, though, I love the idea where he does the kind of the at General Holdo kind of maneuver thing, where he goes upside down
Yeah.
with the X-wing, turns on the lightsaber, and it's like the full spectrum of lightsaber colors, and then just collapses into one. Like visually, it doesn't do anything, right? It's not important, but it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
He goes upside down, slashes like the little kyber crystal in his sister's chest, and then like just hyperspaces his way out of there, destroying the Star Destroyer. And I just thought, so cool. So, like, if you're gonna do that kind of stuff, like I think Samuel's right, where you can. This is the format where you can do that kind of stuff that's not grounded in reality, just because it wouldn't work. Like they're in space without oxygen, without like
Yeah.
any kind of like breathing apparatus. They're just doing God knows what. She has like the lightsabers. She has the lightsabers with how to become like the little whips around his lightsaber. And he like folds it together.
Yeah.
It's so dope. Sorry, my bad.
No worries.
Hold on. Oh, everyone, go ahead.
Yeah. So I agree with you. It's fun watching all this unfold. I just like again, it goes back to there could have been a little bit more because I like the idea of basically we've got the ultimate Jedi and the ultimate Sith fighting at a certain point in the narrative, and so I just would have liked to explore their characters a little bit more because I like that droid. I like everything we established there. I think a lot of these episodes do leave me wanting that part two, and I hope we get it for a lot of these. Whether that's I don't think any of these are ever going to become shows, but if
Right.
there is a Star Wars Vision season two, as I hope that there might be, I would like to see Studio Trigger revisit the twins, and we'll get to another one that I really hope is revisited also.
That's funny that you
Um,
mentioned that, because
so
in a couple of, like the behind the scenes stuff, there's like at least 3 different studios who express interest in like hopefully they work with us again because we want to do more of this. So
yeah,
I really do hope there is. And I mean, if What If can get another season, Abram, so can this. So can this. That's my belief. All right. I think I already yeah, Gonzo. Yeah, they said it twice. All right.
that's a great word for it, by the way.
Gonzo. I sounds weird. I think of the Muppets character.
Yes.
All right. Episode 4, we have The Village Bride. Okay, so this is where we start to kind of move to a little more grounded stuff, I would say. Village Bride. Years after the Great Jedi Purge, a fallen Jedi named F is drawn to a remote planet by an explorer named Valko. Valko explains the bandit raiders have reprogrammed old separatist battle droids and are holding a village hostage. The village's chief's daughter, Haru, and her fiance, Asu, intend to surrender to the bandits as collateral the following morning. While Haru's sister, Saku, wants to fight the bandits, the next morning, the bandits reveal they have captured Saku in an attempt to execute her, but F and Valko intervene and kill all of the bandits. F then departs the planet. Very succinct. So it kind of leaves out some of the most, I think, one of the more important elements of the story, and that is the idea of how on this planet these people relate to the nature and to the
Yeah.
mountain and to the nature in general through the force, as they call it, Majina. I think that's like their word for it. And so, like in the behind the scenes stuff, like the director mentions how he wanted to honor Japan because Japan's very about mountains and nature, and it's very spiritual. Hold on, I realize there's like a huge glare on my face. Give me a second, real quick, and that's a little bit better. Okay, my bad. And so they want to honor Japan and its nature and how people are over there are very into mountains. There's a lot of when I was over there was like a lot of shrines we saw in mountains.
Yeah.
So they have a connection to the planet and they call it Majina because I guess they don't have a formal word for like the force. That's like if you remember, there's that part where that blue projection comes out and then F says like, wait a minute, this feels like, and it just cuts off right there. Like she doesn't get to say the force, but it's
Yeah.
implied heavily that that's what she's feeling is the force and stuff. So that's weird. They don't mention that in the synopsis, but I think that's a big element of that. Um, this one, I really, so like when you do like lists, I feel like most people are very strong about their highest and their lowest.
Yeah.
And the Village Bride kind of, for me, kind of meanders somewhere in the middle where I don't feel particularly strong about it. It's enjoyable, but I think other than like the nature, the commentary about the nature and force stuff, like it really doesn't do that much for me.
Yeah, I'm about in the same boat. I have the this one very close to the bottom of my list actually, mostly because I feel like this is where the wandering force user shows up to the small village to solve their problem trope ends up feeling the most obvious to me. And it's too bad because I like these background elements. I love the idea, and this happens in Rebels too. I love the idea of the repurposed battle droid battalion. Like that's such a great concept. Like all of these droids just all of a sudden shut down. Like the Clone Wars didn't end with a victory; it just ended because it was time for it to end. You know, so all these droids being reused, I think that's such a cool lore concept. But in actuality, it's just kind of like local village has local problem and Jedi shows up to just solve it. And I just think it doesn't quite utilize that source material and those concepts in a way that feels as fulfilling. I think this would have been a great opportunity to not do Jedi and Sith, but we end up doing Jedi and Sith, who end up feeling kind of Deus Ex Machina to me in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Sith like outright, right? It's just a
Yeah.
just bandit,
Oh
bandit
yes,
and
true.
bandit leader and stuff. I feel like, yeah, that's true about the trope about Wandering Jedi comes to the village, but I mean, like, you could also kind of almost apply that to the duel, but
Yeah.
for some reason in the duel it kind of works a little bit better. Not sure why exactly. I mean, because it's not a Jedi. I don't know.
I
Maybe that's
think
why.
I think the duel just has like a stronger vision. It's like it's
Ah, I like that. I like that.
it's all about the wanderer who shows up as the mystique of the wanderer. And there's other interesting elements of the village where they all kind of collaborate in this sort of minimalist story. Here it feels like we've got a super engaging sort of dynamic between this local village that's struggling under this sort of bandit rule with these droids. But then the Jedi who just kind of shows up to solve the problem anyway. Whereas I feel like it would have been more engaging if the Jedi hadn't arrived in the first place. And it had to be the sisters figuring out, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to stand up and fight, or are we just going to, give in to into the wishes of this guy, the like pale faced guy who shows up and is going to kill everybody? Like that to me was the heart of the dynamic, and the Jedi is just there to basically circumvent it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we do see. I mean, there was a plan there for them to stand up, right? And we saw like it
Yeah,
failed spectacularly. So that's why
spectacularly.
that didn't exactly pan out well. But I do think there's, I mean, part of it is how this woman is trying to like sacrifice herself for the good of the village. But then also like kind of like a B plot or kind of the background, we have like this Jedi survivor who's now finally like, she decides to stand up for something, I guess, like for the first time in a very long time. And she does a
Yeah,
thing where she cuts off her braid. She like, self promotes herself to full Jedi Knight she has that dope ass like yellow blade, like very thin, like a katana,
I do
where it's
like
not
that.
just a beam. It's like there's clearly like a wall kind of thing where it's flat. And we have that really dope like samurai thing, right? He pulls back, her shoes like transform or something, like a little lift kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then that quick bush, like the Kirby minigame in All Stars, where you have to like, you know what I'm talking about,
Yes.
right? It's like
Yep.
that, like,
Yep. That's exactly what it is.
and so yeah, I agree with you. I think it could have been stronger, except I don't really know. Like, this is the thing. I feel like most of these episodes suffer because of the time constraint that they're put under. And this one is one of those where I feel like if we had just reallocated some time around, maybe a little less from the beginning, when her and the other Jedi are kind of just goofing off in the forest at the beginning, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe if we just added 5 more minutes, like we could have come up with a much more compelling backstory for the Jedi, or at least understand more of the presence of this like bandit group or something, like other than just like, we have droids and you probably have stuff, so we're gonna hold you hostage. I don't know. I just, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's very kind of just middling.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I had been in charge, and I'm obviously not, but in the 25 years in the future when I'm
Studio
running
Abram.
Lucasfilm and we're working on season 28 of Star Wars Visions, I would say, hey, you all are going to do about 30 minutes of animation. Because I think because some of these are not even like television episode lengths. Some of
No,
these are like 15 minutes or so. And I
yeah,
think that if we brought those run times to like 30 minutes, because Disney can pay top of the line animation studios for half an hour of animation. I think it would have given some of these narratives, especially a couple we're going to get to, more time to breathe.
yeah. Let me read, because Samuel did actually have a comment about this one real quick. Samuel says the Village Bride looks beautiful and does a good job of making me care about its characters and conflict. Interesting. Okay. Also, it has the second best version of the triumphant Jedi stands up against the villain moment, and I love the ending. So there's Samuel's take on that. I agree. I do like the. I don't know if it's the second best. I don't even know if it's the best, but
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for different colored lightsabers. So that's my thing. All right, let's move on to like no one of my favorite ones. My second favorite. I'm just gonna say it right now. The Ninth Jedi, Abram. The Ninth Jedi. Many generations after the Jedi Order became mostly extinct, Margrave Juro, the Jedi ruler, that's a funny idea, Jedi ruler, the Jedi ruler of the planet High Island, invites 7 masterless Jedi to his aerial temple in order to receive lightsabers, whose design has been lost to time. Juro's droid gifts the first lightsaber to a young Jedi named Ethan, the youngest of the 7, as proof, promising the other Jedi that they will receive theirs once they are completed. On the planet's surface, hunters working for the Sith capture the sabersmith Lazima. Lazima's daughter, Kara, who is also force sensitive, escapes with the finished lightsabers, including one for herself, and presents them to the Jedi. However, the 6 Jedi accompanying Ethan reveal themselves as Sith imposters who killed the Jedi invited by Juro and came posing as them in order to murder Juro as well. Juro, who reveals himself to have been disguised as his droid along, Ethan and Kara fight back and kill 5 of the Sith, but spare the 6th, Homan, who is revealed to be an old friend of Juro's and the only survivor of the 6 Masterless Jedi the Sith killed, and had been corrupted by the dark side, but has now returned to the light. Ethan, Kara, and Homan join Juro's new Jedi Order and prepare to rescue Lanzima, who is being held on a Sith-controlled planet. That's a lot about that Homan guy. So, anyways, this one is, I think, I only the duel just barely edges it out for me, just barely, because this one has for me the most interesting story. I love the premise of we're away from the Skywalker saga. We're like way in the future, like Jedi are like again almost extinct. That seems to be a thing, a reoccurring thing for Jedi. But like, I love the idea of them being invited to like this secret kind of meeting, and then they do the really cool thing where they kind of they do a Ryan Johnson, but like very well done in a way where you assume the guy with the mask, the evil looking mask, is the bad guy, and the very unassuming Jedi are the good guys. And then I like how the Sabersmith has a cool thing. It's a very important plot element for this particular story, how the lightsabers, like the color reflects the user, right? Because that's the only way this payoff really works. At the end is when she delivers the lightsabers, they all pick up the lightsabers, and then all these red crimson lightsabers pop up, and you're like, oh no, like, oh no. And then out of the evil looking droid comes out the evil looking ruler, right? And then he turns out to be the good guy. You're like, what? Like, oh my god, like I didn't see this coming. It's the first time, I didn't see it coming and stuff. So I love the story. I also love just how we get that dope, like kind of like speeder bike chase through the little forest. I love that. The director for this studio mentioned how he remembers watching Return of the Jedi in the theaters when he was a kid, and that the bike that chase through the forest was his favorite part of the whole movie. So he had to implement something like that into the episode. So, Abram, what is your take?
The only reason this is not my number one is because I think the duel works better as a self-contained story than the Ninth Jedi does. This to me could be the beginning of a 12 episode series. I love the Ninth Jedi. I think it's fantastic. I think it's some of the most interesting Star Wars world building we have seen in a
Mm-hmm.
very long time.
Absolutely.
I first of all, I love the lightsaber concept of the kyber crystal is not, because usually the Jedi arrive on Ilum and they find the kyber crystal resonates with them. I like the idea that the kyber crystal, these are sort of flexible, and then they're going to kind of change their tenor based on who's igniting the blade. That's super awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it pays off well in the narrative, but the narrative is also just so rich in terms of Jedi. Feel like they're even more of a myth here than they were to Luke in A New Hope.
Yeah.
And when he's like, oh, tell me the story of the Clone Wars. Here they're like, show me a lightsaber. Like these have been gone for generations. That's
Yeah.
so cool. And I just wish we could explore what happens afterwards, because we basically set up an ensemble there with the Margrave and then the daughter of Lightsaber Smith, and Ethan is very that's very much a Japanese studio. It comes up with an American name. Um, and then
Um,
the other guy who ends up having the purple lightsaber, who was kind of corrupted and returns to the light.
Harome,
Yeah,
something like
something
that.
like
Yeah.
that. I would love to see their adventures taken further, because I was just so engaged by the visuals and the concepts here.
I like that idea how he starts off red and then as he kind of comes
Yeah.
around the middle, it's purple. Like, because like I guess because red and blue together, are purple. And like it kind of reminds me of like Mace Windu. I'm like, huh, like that's interesting. We don't really see purple like I mean, we know the story of why Samuel Jackson has a purple lightsaber because he has George Lucas and stuff. But like, I like the idea of how like the color again, the colors telling the story because you talked about this before with like Asajj Ventress and the red and blue and stuff, right? Like color is a huge part of like the Star Wars like mythos and like everything involving like sides and morality and lightsabers and stuff, right? So I love the idea of how like he's like, oh, like I was just like the other Sith like had such an overwhelming aura or presence, like they actually like pushed me over, like they corrupted me. I love like the idea of like how the Margrave's like this isn't you, like calm down. And he's like he takes a deep breath and it turns purple and then like he's like, oh, I'm sorry, like I was, and like he just like it deactivates. I love we hear about that kind of stuff like in some of the books and some of the games. We don't really see like where somebody is like so susceptible to the dark side because of proximity. So I thought that was really cool. um so this is one of the episodes, or this is one of the studios where the director actually said like I pitched the way I came up with this is like I want this to be made into a series that hopefully Lucasfilm might come back to us. So like it was purposely the way it ended, very much kind of not bait in a way, but he's like, hey, like here's a concept, here's like a concept of what we can do. And I feel like this episode is so packed with all for the time limit that it has. There is so much going on, but like it doesn't feel overly rushed. It feels like it's like concise in a way, even though it does end on a cliffhanger. And so the original concept for this, as the director talks about like in the little features, is that he had two different ideas for what he wanted the episodes to be. And then Lucasfilms just said, just put them, can you put them together in one? He's like, okay, I can do that. And it was, he wanted a story about the Sabersmith, and he wanted a story about Ethan, the separate character. And he wanted to tell the story of the Sabersmith and Ethan. And like he's like, well, he approaches Lucasfilm and says, like, I have these two ideas. Like, can I do two separate episodes? And they're like, well, can you put both of them together in a way that makes sense? And he's like, I think I can do that. And so that's why we have the focus on the planet below and then like the aerial temple. And then how dope is that shot, Abram, where like it's over and like the camera pans around and the aerial temple is a lightsaber. I thought that was really cool. I love that
We
scene.
also we also get that awesome droid who shuttles you up to the aerial temple, and he's like
Such a
sipping
big
his
mood.
tea. Yeah, he's so fun. I think again, I think most of these episodes are just stunningly beautiful, but this one in particular, the invention of those visuals like the aerial temple and this droid and the designs of those Jedi hunters, because of course we're familiar with the Inquisitors, but the Jedi hunters
Mhm.
they're different beasts entirely here. So
Yeah.
super cool, a super cool episode, super
I
cool.
love that chase scene through the forest because it looks really dope. And like in the behind the scenes stuff, like they show like that rough outline, and he's like, oh yeah, like it's hard to do animation, but like it's even harder to do like a chase scene like this because there's like
Yeah,
so many moving parts. You have to keep track of the trees and stuff. And it's just I love that part. I love that part where she hops off of it on the ice lake. She does a little back pedal thing where she has to like kind of like run in the opposite direction because her momentum's pushing her in the other way.
yeah,
And then she does the Luke thing, right, where he like chops off the front of the speeder. She does the same thing where it's just like the right has the
yeah.
thing come back around, runs off, and then the guy's just kind of like, well, I guess she got away. So there you go. But I
It's
love
so
that.
good.
I just love the little hop she does in the little run to kind of counterbalance the momentum and the so um yeah, everything you said, let me read what Samuel says here. Samuel says, The Ninth Jedi has a pretty simple story, but I think it has a great execution of that story. It feels incomplete for obvious reasons, but it's also the episode that feels most likely to get a sequel, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. And then Tanner also says, Ninth Jedi had the best setup for a follow-up episode. So, I mean, clearly that was the intention. So hopefully Lucasfilm does follow up or we get a Visions too. So,
Yeah.
anything else, Abram? Are we good?
I think the only other thing I would add is I think Sarah came through a little bit late with some thoughts here.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Did she write anything about this episode though?
So the thing is,
Um,
she did write
yeah,
about
yeah.
several episodes, but she grouped them together. Where like
True, true, true,
this,
true,
and this
true.
episode all have this thing.
I'll be. We certainly have to read Sarah because is Toby one next?
Yeah, after this one, yeah.
Perfect. We'll circle back to Sarah for that one. But no, I don't know if I have anything more to add that I haven't already said about the Ninth Jedi. Just give me more of it, or at least give me a comic or a novel. I'd be happy to continue the story that way if we have
Right?
to.
Because like her dad's captured. Like, I want to know what happens next. Do they
Yeah,
establish another Jedi Order? Like, what happens? Like, I have like so many. I think because it's so far away from the rest of the timeline. Because the rest of the episodes are like right before or right after something from the movies, and this one's like far flung, far future, and it's like I want to know like what's the state of the universe or the galaxy in the future. So
I love getting that far away from Skywalker Saga. I think
yeah, there's like so much like fertile ground for like for good storytelling.
yeah.
So all right, let's see. So next one is Toby, or I'm sorry, T0B1. Shortly after the Great Jedi Purge, a droid named T0B1, or Toby, lives on a deserted planet with his armless creator, Professor Mitaka, and dreams of becoming a Jedi Knight. One day, Mitaka tells him that in order to become a Jedi, he must find a kyber crystal so he can forge a lightsaber. Toby scours the planet but finds nothing. He defies Mitaka's orders to never enter his basement, discovers a starship, and accidentally sends a signal that alerts a Sith Inquisitor to their presence. Mitaka reveals himself to be a former Jedi and hides both Toby and his old lightsaber hilt. When Toby leaves his hiding spot, he discovers that the Inquisitor has ransacked Mitaka's lab and killed him. Toby continues his research and successfully terraforms the planet, but is confronted by the Inquisitor. Upon fixing Mitaka's lightsaber, Toby is revealed to be powered by a kyber crystal and designed by Mitaka to be able to wield the Force. And igniting the lightsaber, kills the Inquisitor in a duel. He then departs the planet to explore the galaxy and uphold Mitaka's legacy. So this one is interesting because the studio I keep saying the studio, but I forgot their names honestly. So I know if I had like an extra hour, I could have done the research, but I didn't. The studio mentions how when they came up with the idea for this, they wanted to kind of evoke Astro Boy, huge part of Japanese culture. Like we cannot like when we heard of this concept, we wanted to do like pay homage to Astro Boy, but also they said they also wanted to pay homage to like 50s and 60s era Disney. And you can definitely see that, especially with the professor. The character looks very much like the animation style, like his eyes look very Disney-esque. And that definitely comes through with like the little droids that follow Toby around, very kind of just like, like Snow White with the forest animals kind of thing going on. Feels a lot like Pinocchio. I wanted to be a real Jedi when I grow up, kind of thing, right? And I actually do like Toby, or not the character so much, I mean like the actual episode Toby, it's just I feel like a lot of the other stories have a lot of the other episodes have a much deeper, either a deeper story or they do more with their runtime than I think Toby does. And Toby, like visually, it's I think one of the most unique, kind of like Studio Triggers, kind of like the twins, where like this stands out visually so much because it's very like Walt Disney-esque and very Astro Boyish, and it has like kind of like almost like a chalk kind of gray to it, like a chalk line. You know what I'm talking about? It has like very like when he shows like the walls of like his room where he draws and some of the other set pieces, like it has like a very chalky Disney. I like the animation style. It's just the story. I think I think a lot of it has to. It's unfortunate because we've seen so many episodes before this. I feel like Toby would have left a stronger impression if it was earlier in the lineup. Because by this point, we've seen Jedi and Sith ad nauseum, and so it really doesn't have the impact I think they probably were going for.
Yeah, this is my least favorite of the show. I think.
Like number
Um,
9 for you?
yeah, it's my number 9.
Wow. Okay.
Now Sarah's on a similar page.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read what she wrote because her thoughts I think echo mine in part. She says, uh, I don't have anything to group Toby 1 into, so I'll just say that I kind of hated it. It's more or less just Astro Boy or Pinocchio, but Star Wars, and it's not me being reductive. That's pretty much all the story is. If you're familiar with either story, you'll know all of Toby 1's beats before you even hit the 2-minute mark. Best part of this is when the credits rolled. Love that. Now, I'm not nearly as hateful towards Toby 1 as she is, but I think Sarah's sort of issues with the plot kind of end up striking at mine. This is like Mary Sue Astrobot made by Professor Light fights an
He does look like
Inquisitor.
Professor Light, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's who I thought of immediately when I saw him.
Yeah.
And I like the aesthetic. I think you're like I can so clearly, obviously, the Astrobot, not Astrobot, the Astro Boy influence is like blatantly
PlayStation.
obvious. And the 50s Disney style, which I love. I love that era of technical animation, like 30s, 40s, 50s Disney stuff. Some of my favorite stuff to watch on Disney Plus, actually. But yeah, it just ends up feeling very hollow to me. From a lore perspective, I like the idea of manufacturing this force user, having the kyber crystal in them. That's super cool, but it just ends up being like very. It feels so simple that in a show that it takes these sort of plot motifs and does more interesting things with them, it ends up feeling, I think, like too much of an homage and not enough of its own unique and challenging narrative. So I would like a little Toby figure on my desk, but I'd love to have like an animation cell hanging on my wall, but I don't think it hits nearly the same highs as most of the other episodes. Even Tatooine Rhapsody, I think the uniqueness of that episode puts it above Toby 1 for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like Tatooine Rhapsody more than Toby. I like how you mentioned though right now you said it's too much of an homage because that was the director for the duel mentioned how they tried to it's related because of your phrasing, how they tried to tiptoe the line about being too much of an homage. So, like we went for an homage visually because like we were trying to be careful not to tell the exact same kind of story as like Kurosawa did with like other stuff. So I think that's a good example of where here they leaned too into it, and the Jedi they kind of just towed the line over what was appropriate. So and then we have Samuel, who is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And he says here, if I could find it, he says, Toby is my favorite. It's like Tatooine Rhapsody with an adorable style and heartwarming story, but I think it also has a great fight scene and emotional moments. The episode almost made me tear up. Wow. Very powerful stuff, Samuel. So, I just remember when I saw Sarah put like, oh yeah, like I hate it. I'm like, whoa, that was just because he had just put it as number 1 and then she put it at her last one. I'm just like, wow, like the gulf between them is vast. So I was like, interesting stuff. Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle for me, kind of just like a Village Bride. It looks cool. I mean, it doesn't look cool, but it looks pretty. It's nice to look at, but it's just I think it just gets overshadowed by the other better stories. So that's where we're at with it. Let's move on. We have The Elder. Next one, number 7. It says centuries after the death of Darth Bane and the initial extinction of the Sith, Tajin and his Padawan Dan there you go with the name Stan, are sent to explore the Outer Rim when Tajin senses a disturbance in the Force. They land on an isolated planet and arrive at a remote village where they learn of a mysterious elder man who hiked onto the mountaintop. Dan follows the elder's trail and meets the man, who reveals himself to be a former Sith who left the Order before it fell apart. The elder the elder wounds Dan, and Tajin arrives to fight the elder. Tajin narrowly manages to kill the elder, who decomposes into a rocky sediment and detonates an explosion that destroys his ship as he dies. As they leave the village upon Dan's recovery, Tajin tells Dan that being a Jedi means being kind-hearted, so they do not end up like the elder. So, Abram, what would you think if I told you this was also by Studio Trigger?
I would be surprised to hear that because I would not have said this is the other one. That shows a great breadth of talent at that studio.
That's exactly why they did it this way. So, like in the behind the scene feature, the director mentioned how because they were fortunate to get two jabs at this anthology, they did the traditional Trigger style, which was the twins, like with the very exaggerated, flashy kind of gonzo art style and stuff. And then they played this one much more straight. They kind of wanted this to be like more traditional just to showcase their wide range of talent. So you picked up on that. Very good. Um, Interesting. So the synopsis for this story actually comes from the director's own experiences, where he mentions how when he was about to retire when they got this Star Wars project, and they looking back on his long career about how and when he started he felt much like the Padawan Dan when he first started his career over 30 years ago in animation. And then now, like as this is like his probably his likely his last project he's going to do, he felt like he's looking back kind of like thoughtful about how like the next generation of animators or like, and I guess in the Star Wars uh example, like Jedi, right? You have your generations of Padawans and masters, and he was thinking about like reminiscing like what kind of stories or what kind of lessons he could pass on to the next generation. And that's how he came up with the premise for this story, where like it mentions at the end, he warns his Padawan about like how not to become like the elder and stuff. Like it's not about strength. Like power is awesome, but like that goes away too. Like it's good. It's temporal. There's other things that are more important. They're going to last longer. And so that's kind of where the idea for this episode came from. So I thought that was really cool and interesting. I love the idea of this really like almost like the anti Yoda. He's like a
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
very short, kind of like unassuming cloaked figure because he shows up in the rain with a cloak. He's like he has like this very like evil, twisted, demonic look, and he has like these two little like short lightsaber katana knife things, and it's I love how he approaches Dan and he's like, oh well, like, oh, you're not him, you're not the one that was like, I don't sense like the strength of like the force strength from you, like it's somebody else. And Dan is very much like Anakin. He's very over eager. He's kind of like Anakin in Attack of the Clones, where like, no, I want to take him now. Like he's very eager to meet the challenge, right? And we kind of get some of the back and forth in the beginning when him and his master are on the way, and he's kind of just like, you get this sense of the relationship where the master is very like his body language. He's like leaning back, arms crossed, very relaxed, like been there, done that. And then Dan's very much the eager, like wants to prove himself. Like I have this master, I want to prove that like yeah, I'm worthy and kind of stuff. And like he's like, you know, slow down a little bit, slow down a bit. Like it's not just about. I mean, they have that conversation, right? Where like, hey, like we could wait around and wait for him to come back, which is a smart thing, right? And then Dan's like, hey, why don't you stay here because you're good with ships. And I go up to we'll split up and I go up the mountain path. And he's like you're hoping you find him, huh? And like he kind of just like, no, it just makes sense. But it's like, yeah, this kid seeks. He's like Luke in A New Hope, or like no, I'm sorry, in Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda's like adventure. Was it adventure or something? But Jedi craves not these things or something, right? But Dan's very much,
Yeah.
he wants to do his thing. So I thought I actually really like the story. The action's all right, but mostly I kind of just feels like this is for me kind of the upper about middle. So
Yeah. To me, I think this is, I'm not very good with numbers here. So it'd be one, two, three. Yes, it is above my bottom third. I think, what is that, sixth place for me? I like the Elder. I think what you're talking about, this sort of like relationship between Master and Padawan, is probably where the episode's most interesting to me. And I really like that idea as you're talking about of, you know, you're only going to get weaker as you get older, right? And this sort of sense of gratitude and appreciation and skill, like that's all really cool. Like I really like when the master is like, yeah, if this Sith Lord had been younger, this fight probably would have gone completely differently.
Yeah.
Like that's all really good stuff. But ultimately, it just ends up feeling like again, it's the Jedi that we meet a wandering Sith, and even though this one I don't watch Dragon Ball, so this might be wrong, but he gives like Master Roshi vibes from things I
Yeah.
understand like peripherally about that character. But like he's this funny, unassuming with like little devil character. So it's a compelling setup, but it just ends up in another lightsaber battle. And because it's those moments around the fight that I find most interesting. Like I love when Dan is winking at the kids who are like behind the boxes and they keep peeking out of
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah.
It's that sort of thematic content that I think gives it actually way more heart and character and theme than I think Twins had. But
Yes, I agree.
but it just a sort of we're so simplified in terms of the actual A plot of what's happening in the Elder that it ends up falling back in my estimation a little bit. Also because I think the Trigger does beautiful animation here, but nowhere near as beautiful as Twins. So
Right. Right.
they're very talented, they're very versatile. I like the story, but or the characters and themes of the story. But the actual plot of the story, I think, is it's okay.
It seems like you can only get one or the other. You have to give up one or the other with them. Where like you can have
Yeah,
amazing visuals and kind of just whatever story, or you can have like good relationships, but then like whatever action. I mean, I think you're right. The the climax with like the elder and stuff like isn't really interesting. I think the first half of the episode is really what I most enjoy about it is the relationship. The also I guess the last few minutes after the elder's gone, where they kind of like here's like the moral or the lesson of the story, right, kind of stuff. But also, I think the cool shot I really liked was at the end when he turns off his lightsaber, sticks it up to his chest, and then ignites it. It reminds me of like in The Last Jedi, where Kylo Ren does the same thing where he catches the lightsaber, turns it on real quick, turns it off, and then the Praetorian Guard just has that hole in his face. Like it was very much like that. So I love that kind of like fatal, kind of like anticlimactic but fatal like delivery. So
I will say the one thing that I found weird about this is like Dan looked dead to me.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't understand. I didn't really understand the whole like he survived the injury type of deal.
Yeah, we see that when the master shows up and then
Yeah,
he's the elder steps off of the rock and you can see like Dan opens one of his eyes. So I'm like, oh, he's still alive. And then because like we see it from behind when he gets attacked, we see it from behind him,
yeah.
and it's just like a streak across. Like we don't see like split in half, and we don't see like how deep the cut was, but it was just enough to knock him out. I guess I don't
I
know,
guess
but
so.
and then him turning into rocks. What was the deal with that?
I didn't really get that either.
I guess it was just to kind of just stir up, like, oh, like what's like, I guess that sense of mystery, I guess.
Yeah.
It felt very cheap. It felt like a very cheap attempt at mystery. All right.
Next
Oh,
one.
wait. I wanted to read young
Perfect.
Samuel says about this. He says, the elder is extremely boring to me, both visually and in premise. The characters are bland. It's way too long and has too much dialogue that I didn't remember much of. The animation outside of the fight is stiff and dull, and the fight itself was good, but there were multiple other episodes with action scenes that I enjoyed more. I mean, for the most part, I agree with him, except
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I thought I actually like the characters, but that's just me. All right. We're almost done here, Abram. We're almost done, I promise.
Two more.
Lop and Ocho. During the reign of the Empire, a rabbit like alien slave named Lop escapes her captors on the planet Tau and is discovered by the planet's clan leader Yasaburo and his daughter Ocho, the latter of whom convinces the former to adopt Lop as his daughter. 7 years later, the Empire has occupied their planet and is exploiting it for its natural resources. Yasaburo wants to drive the Empire off their planet, while Ocho wants to cooperate with the Empire. After failing to convince Yasaburo to join her, Ocho enlists in the Imperial Navy despite Lop's protests. With Ocho gone, Yasaburo passes down the family treasure, an ancient lightsaber given to their ancestor and passed down the generations. To the force sensitive Lop, I didn't actually get that at all. I didn't realize that. And departs to confront Ocho. Ocho blinds Yasaburo in a fight, but Lop arrives and injures Ocho, who is forced to flee. Lop then vows to return Ocho home. I did not really pick up On did you get that, Abram? Did you ever get the sense she was force sensitive before the climax?
Before the climax, not really, but ultimately, just knowing Star Wars storytelling, it kind of felt that way.
Ah,
but
okay.
but I don't think I think that was more just my intuition as a viewer. I don't so we don't see Locke
Yeah,
do
it's never
anything.
shown to us.
No, not until she like I forget what she like force pushes her sister or she does something that's
Yeah,
explicitly force sensitive, but I don't think it's
yeah.
anything before that.
Yeah, I think so either. What I love about this episode so much is just purely the animation. The animation, the aesthetic of the
Yes.
planet, where we have like industry meets nature, industrial meets nature, right? We have like the that dope ending shot where they're in the hangar of the Star Destroyer, and you have like the cherry blossom tree right outside in the window, and like it looks amazing how we just have that kind of not opposition when thinking of when it's like back and forth. There's a word for it, Abram. Go on, word hippo. What is it? Juxtaposition? That's the word
There
I'm
we
looking for.
go. There we go.
Juxtaposition. That's the word. Big word for the day. How we have like the natural stuff, like the people of this planet are very much dressed like traditional like Japanese culture, kind of like with the I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember the major domo style like robes and stuff. And then like when we get the scenes of like the marketplace and the bazaar, it's very much kind of like this is a backwater planet, but like in the best way, where it's just about natural resources, like our planet's beauty. And then we have the empire here basically who's just exploiting these locals. And I mean, it's kind of a cliche kind of premise. It's not anything new at all. But I think just the way the characters are drawn, this is one of the episodes where I feel it's pretty balanced both in a story and aesthetics. I love the visuals. I love when we go to the back part and he introduces the lightsaber. That is the coolest looking lightsaber I've ever seen. It
Yes.
has like the hilt and then like the I forget what it's called, but it's like the square guard that's on top of katanas, kind of. Like it's not a full hand guard, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's like that little block. I love the golden embroidery and all this stuff on the lightsaber. It looks so cool. And just like that, just the visual style of the whole episode, just I just really love it. It resonates really well with me. Um, I didn't really care too much for Ocho. I felt like we were supposed to feel bad for her or feel some kind of sympathy for her, but it just wasn't really clicking with me. And
Yeah.
then I felt like Lop's sudden jump from, oh, like that's my sister, like she dotes on her sister, to now being like it's come to this. And I'm just kind of like I felt that all just went by rather really quickly.
So what's interesting about this one is it scored very low across the board, plugging in all of our numbers for our aggregate list.
Okay.
This was not a favorite amongst the group, but actually this is one of my favorites. Now I have to say that I agree with you in large part that the animation carries a lot of Lop and Ocho.
Yes.
I think that this is actually the most beautiful one because
Absolutely. I
I
do.
love the almost like there's like a grain over the animation. It feels very like 90s animation or something, 90s anime.
Yes, it does actually.
A-
Yeah, you're right.
and I think that that is just such a beautiful, beautiful style. Almost a little bit like Studio Ghibli to me in some respects.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not crazy about introducing a furry into the Star Wars universe. The,
She's adorable.
she's adorable, but I'm a Pokemon fan. I get nervous around these sorts of character designs.
You don't want to
But
give them any more ammunition.
no, not really. And I think you're right. I like the idea. I love the lightsaber. I think it's and it is an archetype of the Empire is exploiting us for resources, but it's an interesting one, especially because we've got a non-human protagonist, and Star Wars I think needs more non-human protagonists, and we get them, but it's cool that we have one so centralized here. Did you have
I'm
something
glad
to
you
say on that
mentioned
point?
I'm glad you mentioned that because in the behind the scenes stuff for this, again, the studio, I always just say the studio because it's a stand-in for
Yeah.
the name that I don't actually remember. But they mentioned how they really wanted to make a character who was not human. They wanted to go for something that was like a biped, but not someone who's a humanoid, but not exactly a human. So they say, could we do a rabbit as a main character in Star Wars? And it turns out, I think one of the people at the studios actually did some research, like has Lucasfilm ever used like a rabbit? And they have actually. There's a
Yes.
character, Jackson. I'm sure if you've seen Jackson is like a green hair, like green rabbit character that's like in the old Star Wars comics. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, why don't we just make our character like the female version of that species? And we're like, okay, well, we can, I guess we can do that. And like Lucasfilm was like, sure, go ahead. And so yeah, that's how we ended up with Lop, because it was like there is an established rabbit race already in Star Wars in the past, so that's how they got that in there. But also because they wanted something that what they wanted the as because Star Wars tends to be very human centric, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
hold on, if we have a galaxy of all these creatures, why is it always humans? And so that's kind of why they wanted to go out of their way to present a character who's not just a basic, human. So they went with some of those humanoid or human esque with the Lop, and I like Lop. I think Lop's adorable, but I mean, I totally see your point, Aaron, where it's like, do we really want to give that that part of the internet more fuel, more nightmare fuel? And I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Doing it in the
but
Gardevoir situation. So
yes,
I get you.
it
But
works
yeah, you're
though.
right with the night. It has like that grain, especially when we have like those like shots are not close ups with the kind of the landscape are far back. If you notice when she's running through the marketplace after she runs away, after she jumps away from her sister, like when she like plops down to the
Yeah.
marketplace, she's running through the bazaar, like the backgrounds are actually like hand painted. And like when I mean hand painted, I mean like obviously most animation is done with hands, right? But it's not like computer generated like the characters are. It is kind of like in Resident Evil when you have your pre-rendered backgrounds. So
Yeah.
they actually went out of their way to make sure like to kind of evoke that 90s style that you picked up on. So
Yeah,
very good, Abram.
I think it's so beautiful, and I kind of wish they weren't. It didn't end up being another lightsaber fight to end the episode.
To be fair,
Yeah,
she her sister doesn't use lightsaber. She has some kind of like vibro blade something.
it was actually cool how they use like sort of like traditional melee weapons. Like the father fights with sais, like he's
Yeah.
Raphael, which I like.
Uh-huh.
But they still make lightsaber sounds. I thought that was a really interesting bit of sound design there. So I think it's cool, but it's like again, I love the idea of the father like he's basically they call him a terrorist. It's almost like a Barrett Final Fantasy VII type situation.
Oh, you're right. He does
Yeah,
seem like Barrett. That's a good example.
and I
Yeah.
like that, and I like this idea of then the sister trying to like protect the father by looking to the emperor and the sort of tension between like taking support from the empire, not taking support from the empire. But then it ends up being okay. Now we're gonna settle it in the battlefield, which is fun because again, I think the episode is beautiful. But like, I think there was an opportunity for the last act of the episode to maybe go in a little bit of a different direction. Maybe they're just like general freedom fighters and they're not
Mhm.
actually force sensitive or something. But I think the uniqueness of the aesthetic and the uniqueness of us not being a human protagonist, it does help it feel more unique, even though again it's we're going to settle it with lightsabers. But no, I was really quite enamored with the world that we're set in, the idea of of Lot being a runaway from the Empire. It's all really good stuff there. Much like Ninth Jedi, I would love to see more of these characters in this world.
Yeah, I love the world of the premise. What we see of the world of Tau looks really dope.
Yeah,
Um, oh shoot, I had a point and I forgot the point. Oh right, I love the idea of how she gets adopted into like this family, and at the end, because at first Yazaburo is very like hesitant, like oh, like, I don't know, we should have we shouldn't adopt somebody like into our family and stuff. And the sister's like, oh, of course we can, like we can afford to. We have like the resources. And at the end, like she's like, I want to protect this planet. Like you got you and my sister like adopted me. Like this planet means the world to me. It's
yeah,
like all I ever known. And even though I'm not from this planet, right? She's from a different planet, different culture. She's like, this is my home now. And so her father, right, is like, well, you're not, of our blood, but like you are technically going to be now the end of our bloodline
yeah,
because you are part of this family. You're part of like we love you and stuff. So here's like your inheritance in a way, right, with the lightsaber and everything. Like you're going to be the last of us, basically. And I love the idea of just kind of like I've always been a sucker for that trope of family's not who you're born with, it's like who you
yeah,
grow up with kind of stuff. And like it always resonates a little bit stronger with me. So I think even despite all that, Lop and Ocho for me is like right in the middle. There's
sure,
9 episodes and it's literally number 5 for me. It's right in the middle
yeah,
because while there is stuff that does, it's better than a lot of stuff. I think there's other episodes that are just stronger overall. But
sure.
so yeah, that's where we are.
Sidebar before we move on to the last episode. I wish that Ray's bloodline could have been handled as well as this was.
I mean,
Adopted family stuff. I like this better. That's all I'm gonna say. JJ.
yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I can see that. All right, thank you.
Last episode time. We made it.
We made indeed Akakiri. Oof. Okay. Prior to the initial extinction of the Sith, a Jedi named Tsubaki, who has been suffering from visions of an identified individual dying in front of him, reunites with his old love Misa, a princess who has been overthrown by her dark side wielding aunt Masago. With the aid of guides Senshu and Kamahachi, Tsubaki and Misa make their way to the royal palace. Masago captures Tsubaki's friends and overpowers him, then attempts to convince him to join her as her apprentice. When Tsubaki refuses, Masago's masked henchmen attack him. Tsubaki kills them, but also accidentally kills Misa dressed in their uniform, just as he had foreseen. Completely broken, Tsubaki agrees to join Masago in order to resurrect Misa and then departs. So, my biggest gripe with this one, and it's kind of a hollow, kind of superficial one, is I don't like the animation that much. I really it's very brown, very red, very dark colors, and it's just very unpleasant to watch, in my opinion. There's a lot of red, and then the creative director for the episode mentions in those extra stuff about why they lean so much into the red towards the end. It gets redder and redder. I don't know if you noticed throughout the episode, it gets more red, and it's very much kind of just foreshadowing the turn of the character. But I don't know. It's just I think also just the fact that it's the last one, you kind of feel like we made it. It's just kind of like, okay, let's get through this in a way. Because while I do every other episode before this, I actually enjoy more. Like this is literally my least favorite of the series. And it's just I don't care for the characters really. I like the foreshadowing of like the visions like coming in back and forth. I do like that element. I just don't care for the characters. I really don't like the music. The music is a huge part of this, and I think we talked about it. I talked about it last night with Samuel a little bit about how he loved that. I really didn't like the constant use of drumming; it was really annoying, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. Although I do appreciate they make an interesting creative choice at the end with the way it ends. But I'm just kind of, eh.
Yeah. So this one, and now that I know that it's at your number nine, just kind of like trying to do the math in my head, I think this is going to be the bottom of the list for the community. This might actually be my hottest take because this is my number four.
Ooh,
I actually
wow,
like this.
number four.
Yeah, I like this episode quite a bit. I like the sort of harshness of the visuals and the sound design, especially towards the end of the episode when the drum is just omnipresent for those last couple minutes. Because this is also a very short episode. I think. I think it's one of the. It's like 17 minutes or
It's
something.
14 minutes.
14
I
minutes.
remember it was like 14
Okay.
minutes something.
Yeah, so it's quick, and so I kind of like using the visuals and the sound to kind of cue us into the turn. And I really like the subversion of the Jedi is going to come in and rescue us all for throughout Visions. It doesn't
Mhm.
happen here, and it's rare that for Star Wars, a franchise that's about hope and revival, that we end on such a dour note here. It feels very Revenge of the Sith or very Empire Strikes Back. So I think that's kind of a fun note to leave not only the episode but the entire show on. I think it was a cool place to end. But I think the problem with this one is that maybe more than any of the other ones, this felt like a 90-minute animated movie that was cut down to short length. Because I found myself actually rewinding it at certain points to just make sure I was actually catching what was going on there.
Mhm.
Because the episode's actually quite simple, but there's this whole like it almost felt like Mulan-esque quest that we go on as we're venturing into the castle with these side characters. We're doing all of our stuff here, and it was like a Disney ensemble of the guys, or maybe Raya and the Last Dragon. Actually, is probably the more apt comparison of like we arrived in the place. We need this sort of wacky side characters to come along and show us the way through. But that's not really the heart of the episode. But like half of the runtime is taken up getting to the fighting the Sith. And then by the time we're there, the turn is foreshadowed through like Tsubaki's vision,
Mhm.
visions that he's having.
That word
Um,
again.
but even that, I had to rewind and be like, oh, okay, wait, I think I get it, but I need to double check that I actually understand who was in that vision. Oh, okay, yes, it is the main character here that she's killed, and then we're going to use the Force to, the path, this ability to some may consider unnatural to bring her back to life. So I think this one really felt like it was cut down, but the core of it, this sort of turn to the dark side is sort of a distillation of a lot of themes that we see throughout the prequels that I end up really enjoying. But This one really could have been even just 23 minutes, as some of the others were. I think it would have been a lot stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I also didn't really care for the side characters or the
Yeah,
comedic relief. Like, I get they were supposed to be kind of like the R2 C3PO kind of analogy
yeah,
or whatever the comparison, but I just they came off as more annoying than anything. I really didn't care for them. I think I agree with Samuel. I have it right here. I think Samuel says Agakiri is an underwhelming end to the series. I like the art style and music, but the ending was anticlimactic. It felt like the pilot to a show I'm not really interested in seeing. Um, okay, that's not exactly what I was thinking, but it's just I don't know. I get what you're saying.
yeah,
What I do appreciate is we do have the flashback, right? Where he's with the I don't know if it's his master or the council or whatever, when it's like, are you sure you want to go? Like maybe we should send somebody who's like, not so close to this,
yeah,
situation. And it's just the hubris, right? Kind of like, no, like I can handle it, the overestimating oneself, like what, he goes into a situation he's not actually prepared for, he's warned about, and then we see what happens as a result of those consequences. And he succumbs to the dark side. He does the, like is it yeah, you're right. The whole Anakin opera scene, right? Kind of a
yeah,
thing where like, can I? Is it possible to learn this power not from a Jedi, right? Because Masago is not clearly not a Jedi.
yeah,
And then also Masago's design, I thought was really interesting. The directors mentioned how they wanted, even though Masago is the aunt, is a female character, they wanted her like at first appearance, her initial appearance to be very masculine. Like when you see her, like she's built, right? She's very, very
yeah,
thick woman. And like that was purpose to kind of throw you off of what a Sith woman could like look like. I guess that's what they kind of mentioned. So I thought that was interesting. I
yeah,
really don't care for the character designs too much. It's just whatever. Even like the guards, like the like her like soldiers or
sure,
whatever. It's just I don't know. It doesn't look that great, Abram. I don't think it looks that great. I mean, compared to like all the beautiful stuff we've seen up to this point,
yeah,
it just doesn't stick the landing for me. But I can see your point of view where it does. You're right. I think once you said Empire Strikes Back, where we're left in a situation where like it looks dark for our heroes, kind of, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is kind of like what they kind of went for here. Where like it seems like if this was made into a series, I imagine he's probably going to get redeemed. Subaki
yeah.
would find a way back to the light side with the power of love from Misa or something. But I just feel like everything else in the show either looks better, sounds better, or
Sure.
just is a tighter story. So that's where I'm at.
Well, Andrew, I think it's time to unveil the ranking. But before we do, you have to send me your ranking so I can add that into the aggregate here.
Myself?
Yes. Yeah,
I
you
thought you were
sent
talking
yours
to the
over.
audience for a second. I wasn't sure.
No, 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 no. The audience has submitted theirs. You're going to
All
submit
right.
yours. I'm
All
going
right.
to
Here it
cut
is.
here. All right. So we've plugged all of the numbers in. We've got a ranking here, but we've got two ties we have to work out. But what we're going to do is we're going to go from number 9 and work our way up to our number 1, and we'll stop to adjudicate ties as we must. But the lowest scoring episode, our number 9, not a big surprise here, is Akakiri. Um, and it was pretty much unanimous. There's a pretty wide spread between our number 9 and number 8. But moving into number 8, we actually don't know because there's a tie for 8 and 7, and that is between Toby and the Village Bride.
I would put Village Bride above Toby.
If you put Village Bride above Toby, well, I would also. So that's an easy tie to break. So
Although I
that
think initially I had Toby above the Village Bride before, but I think after talking about this, I do think I enjoy the Village Bride a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's about where I am too. They're both low on my list, but that means number 9, Akakiri, number 8, Toby 1, number 7, The Village, number 6 is La Pinocho.
Mm.
Now, number 5 and number 4 is our only other tie we have to litigate here, and that is The Elder and Tatooine Rhapsody.
I got. I think we're gonna disagree here. I put Tatooine Rhapsody above the Elder.
So here's what I would say.
I knew it. I knew it.
Mine is inverted. However, I'm going to defer and I'm going to put Tatooine Rhapsody above because I think that, first of all, I think the scores for Tatooine Rhapsody are higher across the board for the community, but also because I think that the the freshness of the concept of tackling Rhapsody is quite interesting. And the Elder, while it's compelling as we're talking about from sort of like that thematic level, again, it's a lightsaber battle, and that's kind of the crux of the episode. So we're gonna lock in our number 5 position as the Elder. We're gonna lock in number 4 as Tatooine Rhapsody. And now,
right side of history, bro.
do you want to have a prediction as to what number 3 is?
It's gonna be the twins.
You are correct. Number 3 is the twins. And that leaves us with 2 episodes left.
So
the
obvious.
Duel and Ninth Jedi.
The Duel is number 1.
The Duel was a clear number 1. It was 4 points ahead of the Ninth Jedi, which came at number 2, which means our full ranking is as follows. Number 9, Akakiri. Number 8, Toby-Wan. Number 7, The Village Bride. Number 6, Lop and Ocho. Number 5, The Elder. Number 4, Tatooine Rhapsody. Number 3, Twins. Number 2, Ninth Jedi. And number 1, The Duel.
I'm good with that list. I'm happy with that list. That's a solid. I mean, bias aside, I think that's a solid, or they should be at.
Yeah, I think that's about fair. I mean, it's. I think Tatooine Rhapsody and Lop and Ocho are the 2 biggest ones that feel off from my personal list. But I think on the whole, we did a good job here.
Yeah, I think there's very little room for anyone to be like, oh, like that. It's not a good spot. I think, yeah, I mean, the law of averages dictates that that's how it should be, right? But
yeah,
I mean, it's not exactly my list, but it's pretty damn close. There's like probably like 2 or 2 maybe that I would switch around, but other than that, it's dead on.
Yeah. Well, this was a very fun exercise, and I'm very glad I got an opportunity to actually finish Visions, because it was just it was in my backlog of content to watch for so long, but this was the push I needed, and now that
leaves push you needed.
Leaves 1 show left for me, and that's the Bad Batch. I have to watch the Bad Batch, and then I'm
halfway through. I'm only halfway through the Bad Batch. I need to finish that too.
Yeah, but Andrew, this has been a great episode. I think the longest episode, I believe, but it was worth it for Visions. We got all the way through, talked about all the episodes with a ranking, and now we're inching ever closer to the next show we're going to talk about, which is Kenobi. But we'll have a couple episodes in the meantime.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Should have just left it Kenobi, I think, but
I thought it was just Kenobi. It's Obi-Wan.
No,
Kenobi?
it was, and then they changed it to the full name. I'm like, I should just left it Kenobi.
I should have.
Abram, having watched Visions now,
yeah,
has your general feeling or attitude towards anime broadly changed at all, or are you still just as indifferent as ever?
Well, what's interesting about it is this. So I'm studying Japanese right now, and I'm not very good at it. It's probably the worst I've been at any subject that is not like math related ever in my life. And one of the suggestions I got from the tutor was to watch anime, listen to Japanese. So I watched these with subtitles, and I thought that was really compelling. And I like the aesthetic, and I like that experience. And so I think I was never anti-anime, but I feel like I'm getting more and more open to it, just as I can,
cultured.
Yeah, a little Akira here, little Visions there, a little Howl's Moving Castle over here.
Oh, I think Howl's Moving Castle.
The next one is Cowboy Bebop.
I love Cowboy Bebop. Watch that and then let me know what you think about the Netflix one, because I hear the Netflix one isn't that great, so I'm curious.
Yeah. But Andrew, any other thoughts before we round up the episode?
Just one last one, just the anime related one. When you were watching with subtitles, were there words were like, oh, I recognize that word, or oh, I know that word?
Yes, there actually were. I can like start to hear individual words, or the other one is like I can hear sentence construction and it makes a little bit more sense. And it's interesting to like hear the Japanese, because it's like, and
it's like backwards kind of.
It is, and like it's like particles refer backwards in Japanese to like the noun before them and everything. So like it's interesting to pick up. I mean, I could come nowhere near like just listening to the audio and understanding the episode, but hearing a sentence and then seeing the subtitles and like that process of deriving the meaning, I found to be really interesting. But
that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a great episode. And you might not have any other thoughts you want to share, Andrew, but I've got one that I'd like you to share.
May the force be with you.